The new set Extradimensional Crisis just dropped. We just had a massive 900 player tournament, and in this video we're going to show off which are the best decks that you can play to get to Master Ball rank as fast as possible. So I wanted to start off with a metagame spread so you guys could see what are the most played decks in this 900 player tournament. I'm going to focus on the decks that had a above 50% win rate first. Then we're going to go with decks that are like pretty popular that could be really good in ladder, starting off with that Silvally and Rampardos deck. So the goal with this deck is to get Silvally online as quick as possible. Silvally with 2 energies, if you play a supporter card from your hand during this turn, it deals 100 damage, and it's super easy to get this Pokemon online since Gladion puts a type null or Silvally from your deck into your hand. So you pretty much search your entire deck. The way this deck is built is that our only basic Pokemon is type null and technically the Skull Fossil, but since it's not a basic Pokemon, you're guaranteed to start with type null, and you could use him as a single energy attacker. With 1 energy, he deals 20 damage. You flip a coin, if you land a heads, you're dealing an extra 20 damage. So this is really good to get chip damage off on Pokemon that live a little bit over 100 HP, so Silvally could take care of them in the next turn, or you could get chip damage off on big EX Pokemon so that Rampardos can finish them off on the next turn. We're playing 2 copies of Rare Candy. This is going to help us get our Rampardos online as quickly as possible. Rampardos with 1 single energy dealing 130 damage is massive in this format. And we have our typical spread of supporters in Professor's Research, Sabrina, Mars, Iono, and Red to help us disrupt the opponent's hand, to help us cycle through our deck in the case of Iono to get that fossil line online as quickly as possible. Although in the space of this red, I like to run a Giovanni, the way you deal 10 extra damage to your opponent's non-EX Pokemon, which is going to allow your Silvally to deal 110 damage, which is really good in the mirror. You're going to be able to knock them out without having to spend 2 turns. So if you guys like this type of video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, drop a like, it helps me out a ton. And in this channel, we're also going to play all of these decks. We're going to do gameplay on my road to Master Ball rank. Hopefully we get to hit that really soon. So the next deck that we have is Buzzwole Celesteela. This variant of the deck is really good against the majority of the metagame, and it's especially good against another Buzzwole variant that we're going to see really quickly, which is this one that is using Kartana as our single energy attacker. So Buzzwole is the new EX Pokemon of the set. With 2 energies, his attack deals 30 damage, but with 3 energies, you deal 120 damage, but Buzzwole can't use Big Beat during the next turn. Now there is a way that we can get around this using Celesteela's ability. Celesteela has Ultra Thrusters. Once per turn, you may switch your active Ultra Beast with one of your benched Ultra Beasts. So if you already have a Buzzwole online, you could use Celesteela's ability to switch in either a Kartana or a Pheromosa. You can attach an energy to retreat those Pokemon, and since Buzzwole is now a new EX Pokemon, he can attack again with Big B. So once we have that engine online, it's really easy just to get off back-to-back attacks with Buzzwole X. The other attackers that we have in Kartana and Pheromosa, these attackers are really good since they're single energy attackers that we can use in the early game to deal chip damage to the opponent, especially in the case of Kartana. Kartana dealing 40 damage with 1 single energy is really good to knock out or deal chip damage to a lot of basic Pokemon in the format. The only problem is that he only lives 60 HP. So in the case of the other Buzzwole variant that we were seeing, which is this one, they opted to not play Kartana since Pheromosa, with her attack, she deals 20 damage to the active Pokemon and 20 damage to a bench Pokemon. Over the course of 3 turns, she could take care of a Kartana. So it could be a really easy single prize that the opponent could take if we're not careful. From what I've seen, this variant has a better win rate overall, but this variant is a little bit quicker and has a better win rate against those, like we could say, single price decks like we saw, like the Silvally Rampardos deck. Now for our supporter suite, we're playing the typical Professor's Research, Red, Guzma, Cyrus, and Erica. And what helps us really get these Pokemon online as quickly as possible is Lucamina. Lucamina, you can only play it if your opponent has gotten at least 1 point, which is really easy if we just sacrifice our Kartana or Pheromosa in early game, just deal chip damage and wait for your opponent to knock them out while we charge a Buzzwole X. But Lucamina you choose one of your Ultra Beasts and you attach 2 random energy from your discard pile to that Pokemon. So makes it really easy to get our Buzzwole X and Celesteela online after our opponent has knocked out a Kartana or a Pheromosa. We're also playing a copy of Red card since it's really good hand disruption in the format, and since all of our Pokemon are Leaf type Pokemon, we could play Leaf Cape to give them an extra 30 HP and Erica to heal 50 damage from our Pokemon. So the next deck that we have that's really been disrupting the meta is Solgaleo Shiinotic. This deck is also ridiculously fast. The main goal of this deck is to get our Solgaleo online as fast as possible since he's our only attacker. Now, the support Pokemon that we're using here is Shiinotic. With his ability, once during your turn, you could put a random Pokemon from your deck into your hand. This is going to make it really easy to get your Solgaleo online as fast as possible. But the other thing that's really good about this ability is that it really thins your deck really fast. So it makes it really easy to hit all of your supporters in the late game and pretty much just use whatever you need to get those last prizes in late game scenarios. You're going to cycle through your deck so fast that if you need a Sabrina to get a Pokemon into the active slot to knock them out with Solgaleo, you could do so. Or if you dealt a little bit of chip damage, whether it be with the Morlul or just with an attack of a Solgaleo that didn't quite knock out a Pokemon X, late game you could use a Cyrus to pull one of those Pokemon into the active spot and knock them out for the win. Really self-explanatory. 2 rare candies to get that Solgaleo online as quickly as possible. And in our supporter line, we're playing the typical Professor's Research, Lily to cure our Solgaleo to make it a lot harder for our opponents to knock him out, Red to deal with the opponent's EX decks, Cyrus, Mars, and Sabrina. So this deck, in my opinion, is probably one of the best decks in the format, since right now a lot of people are playing that Silvally Rampardos deck since it's super easy to build, and this deck counters that deck super hard since Solgaleo pretty much knocks out all of the Pokemon. Well, it knocks out that Silvally. It's a little bit harder to knock out that Rampardos, but it does tank a Rampardos hit. So even if you need to take a couple of turns to take care of the Rampardos, it doesn't really affect you. So this would be my pick of the format if you want to get to Master Ball or Ultra Ball rank really fast. Next deck we have here is our Charizard and Incineroar deck. Now this is a deck that is using cards from the previous sets, so if you don't quite have those new Extradimensional Crisis cards, this is a really good pick. And this deck has a really good matchup against the majority of the metagame. It does struggle a bit against the new decks, against that Buzzwole and that Silvally deck, but against, we could say, the old meta, things like Solgaleo or Darkrai Giratina, this deck is really good still. So if you guys have this deck built and you don't quite have the new cards, don't worry, this is still a really good option. So the main goal of this deck is to get our Charizard EX online as quickly as possible and to use Incineroar X as a late game option, as a last case scenario. This deck, the only bad thing about it is that it really depends on those 2 rare candies to get our Charizard and Incineroar online as quickly as possible, especially Charizard to use his first attack with Stoke. With 1 fire energy, you take 3 fire energy from your energy zone and attach it to this Pokemon, and then the next turn you attach another energy card, getting to that 5 energy that it needs to attack with Steam Artillery and deal those 150 damage, which is pretty much more than enough to knock out most of the Pokemon in the format. This is especially really good against Solgaleo, since if I'm not mistaken, Solgaleo is weak to fire attacks, so that's going to deal 170 damage. If Solgaleo attacks us back, that's going to deal the last 10 damage that we need to get the knockout, or we could use the red to deal that extra 20 damage. Late game, we're going to have Incineroar as our secondary attacker with 1 energy, he deals 30 damage and burns the opponent's active Pokemon, and with 3 energies, he deals 80 damage, and if this Pokemon has any damage on it, he deals an extra 60 damage. So for 3 energy, dealing 140 damage, that's really similar to Charizard X. The only bad thing is that he needs to have a little bit of damage on him, so Charizard is a little bit more consistent, which is why we're playing 2 copies of the Charizard line. For our supporters, Professor's Research, Lily, since we're playing mostly pretty much only stage 2 Pokemon, this is going to heal our Pokemon to make it a lot easier to knock them out. Mars and Red card as our hand disruption, Red to knock out those EX Pokemon, and Giant Cape to give them a little bit more HP. Next deck we have here is Desudii, pretty much double Desudii. This is also a new deck, which it's pretty much on that border of 50% win rate, but I wanted to include it here in case you're a Desudii fan, or if you just want to try out some of these new cards. So the main goal of this deck is to get a little chip damage onto the opponent's Pokemon to really take advantage of the main attacks of our Desudii X. So Desudii has 2 attacks. With 2 leaf energies, he deals 80 damage to your opponent's active active Pokemon, but with his first attack, he deals 100 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon that already has damage on it. So the main thing here is that you want to deal chip damage to your opponent's Pokemon, either with Rowlet. With his first attack, he deals 10 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon, or the main way to get chip damage off is the new Pheromosa. With her attack, she deals 20 damage to the opponent's active Pokemon, 20 damage to any of their bench Pokemon, and that's going to really help you to get that extra 100 damage off from that first Decidueye's attack. Now, we also have this new Decidueye. With 2 energies, he deals 70 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon, whether they have damage on them or not. The main benefit here is that this is a single prizer, and it could help you get some damage onto the opponent's bench Pokemon to knock them out, finish them off. The really strong thing about this deck is we're only playing grass Pokemon here, so you could take advantage of Leaf Cape. Giving these Pokemon an extra 30 HP is massive in the current format, and you could also heal them 50 HP with Erica or 60 HP with Lily, since our main Pokemon here are stage 2. So this is a really, I don't want to say like slow deck since it's not that slow, but in the late game we could really heal up these Pokemon to like make the matches go on really long and just win the battle of attrition, just snipe the opponent's Pokemon. So aside from this, well, engine, we're playing Professor's Research, Pokeball, and Rare Candy. So pretty straightforward deck, really strong. Now next deck we have here is Magnezone Giratina. Now this pretty much isn't playing any of the new cards, but the important thing about this deck is that it has a really good matchup against that Silvally and Rampardos deck. So if you guys still have this deck lying around, it's a really good deck in the current meta, and if you don't have the new cards, you could just play this to get a quick Ultra Ball or Master Ball rank. So the main goal of this deck, if you guys haven't played it yet, is to pretty much charge both of our main Pokemon at the same time. Magnezone as a stage 1 with his ability, once during your turn, you can take an electric energy from your energy zone and attach it to this Pokemon. And Giratina X, once during your turn, you can take a psychic energy from your energy zone and attach it to this Pokemon. But when you use this ability, your turn is going to end. So you want to use both of these abilities during the first couple of turns in the game to charge energies on both of these Pokemon, and generally you're going to be using Magnezone as your first attack. For energies, you're only going to want to run psychic energies in this deck, since Magneton is going to get you those electric energies, and Magnezone with his ability, he deals 110 damage, which is massive for a Pokemon that resists 140 HP. The downside is that you discard an electric energy from this Pokemon, but typically you're going to use Volt Charge twice before this Magnezone starts attacking, so you're going to be able to get 2 solid attacks off with this Magnezone before you have to retreat him and start using Giratina as your second attacker, which is perfectly fine because this is pretty much going to give you time in order to charge the last energies onto Giratina and start using that Chaotic Impact, dealing 130 damage. The card that we're using, well, the most recent card from the last set, Tapu Lele, it's a single energy attacker that we can also use in the early game while you're attaching energies onto these Pokemon, 90 HP, and with her attack, it deals 20 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon for each energy attached to them. So for one psychic energy, that's pretty massive against decks that want to attach multiple energies onto their Pokemon, or if your opponent's Pokemon only has one energy, either way, dealing 20 damage with a single energy, it's pretty on rate. It's pretty good while we get those energy attachments onto our main attackers. For our supporter line, we have 2 copies of Professor's Research to cycle through our deck, Mars for that hand disruption, Cyrus, Guzma, Pokemon Center Lady, 2 copies of Pokeball, Repel, which is one of our new cards, which is pretty much a Sabrina as an item card. You switch out one of your opponent's active basic Pokemon to their bench, and Giant Cape. Now, the next deck that didn't quite do too well in this tournament, but it still has a lot of new fun cards, and I feel like it's strong enough to possibly be really good later on into the metagame, and that's Guzzlord Nihilego. Guzzlord, with his first attack, 2 energies, deals 30 damage, but you flip a coin until you get a tails, and for each heads, you discard a random energy from your opponent's Pokemon. This is really going to draw out a lot of those games, especially if your opponent's using Pokemon that require multiple energies to get off their attacks. You're really going to slow them down, which is going to give you enough time to attach those 4 energies in order to use Tyrannical Hole, dealing 120 damage. The main thing that's strong about Guzzlord is that for a basic Pokemon, he has a ton of HP. He's living 170 HP, which is really hard to get through. So the other motor that we're using here, well, engine, is Poison Barb. Poison Barb, you attach it onto that Guzzlord. If they receive damage, the opponent's Pokemon becomes poisoned, and that goes really well with Nihilego's ability. With more poison, your opponent's active Pokemon takes an additional 10 damage from being poisoned. And with their attack, for 2 energies, deals 30 damage, and your opponent's active Pokemon is now poisoned. So that's another way to get the poison off, although to be honest, we really only want to use them as a support Pokemon, and we want Guzzlord to be in the front tanking those hits and taking care of your opponent's energies. The other secondary Pokemon we're running is Celesteela. Again, for those Ultra Thrusters, just once during your turn, you can switch one of your active Ultra Beasts with one of your benched Ultra Beasts. Since all of the Pokemon that we're playing here are Ultra Beasts, if your opponent ever switches out your Pokemon, whether it be with a Repel or with a Sabrina, you could use Celesteela's Ultra Thrusters to get that Guzzlord back in the active spot. For our supporters, we're running the 2 Professor's Research, the 2 Lusamines, since all of our Pokemon are Ultra Beasts. This is going to be really good to get that second attack off on Guzzlord. If we're in a situation where we didn't open with that Guzzlord, we have to put a Nihilego in the active slot. We can use Nihilego as an attacker and then in late game, put those energy attachments onto Guzzlord. We have Sabrina to switch in those active Pokemon, Cyrus as well, Mars for the hand disruption, Guzma for the Pokemon tool disruption, Pokeballs and Pokemon communication to cycle through our deck and get that Guzzlord out real quick, and Beastite, which attacks used by the Ultra Beasts this card is attached to, deal 10 damage to your opponent's active Pokemon for each point you've taken this game, which is making that Guzzlord deal additional damage. Now, the last deck we have here is that Arceus Giratina Darkrai deck. From the old decks, this is the best performing deck that I've seen. The good thing is that the win rate that I've seen on this, it's pretty much 50%. So it's not going to dominate the metagame. We're not going to have this situation where the new cards aren't seeing play, but this is a really good option if you don't have any of the new cards or if you just really, really like this deck. You can still play it. It's still really good in the current meta. So the main objective of this deck is to utilize, well, all these massive Pokemon X as your main attackers. You have a really, really good motor here where Giratina, during the first turns, you're not really going to be using any attacks. So you could start using Broken Space Bellow to attach Psychic Energy onto that Giratina. Darkrai X, whenever you attach a dark energy to this Pokemon, you're going to deal 20 damage to your opponent's Pokemon, to your opponent's active Pokemon. So in the first turns, you could just attach darkness energies onto Darkrai to deal chip damage to your opponent's Pokemon, and you could start charging Giratina's psychic energies with their ability. Generally, our main attacker is Arceus X. With their attack with 3 energies of any type, you deal 70 damage, and this attack deals 20 more damage for each of your bench Pokemon. So if you have a full bench, this is dealing 130 damage, which is still really good for a basic Pokemon that lives 140 HP. The other support Pokemon that we're using is Crobat. Crobat's ability, once during your turn, if you have an Arceus or Arceus X in play, you may deal 30 damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. So this is insane. You're dealing 30 damage with Crobat, 20 damage with Darkrai. That's just 50 chip damage for free without even using your attack. So this combined with Arceus attack pretty much is like a maximum of 180 damage, which knocks out the majority of Pokemon X in the format. For the supporters here, we're using 2 copies of Professor's Research to cycle through our deck, along with those 2 copies of Pokeball and Pokemon Communication. Now, the main supporter we're using here is Dawn as well. Dawn allows you to move 1 energy from one of your bench Pokemon to your active Pokemon, which allows you to get those psychic energy off of your Giratina to attach them onto that Arceus to start attacking really quick. Mars for that hand disruption, 2 copies of Rare Candy to get the Crobat online as fast as possible, and the Giant Cape just to make these Pokemon a little bit tankier. So in general, those are the best decks of the format. If you like the video, don't forget to subscribe, give it a like. It really helps the channel a lot, and I'll see you in the next time with more Pokemon gameplay. Take care. Bye-bye.